What they say, you can take the girl out of the sport, but you can't take the sport out of the girl. And our next guest might just know a thing or two about that.
Anu Vaidyanathan. I'm going to let her say it. I'm so sorry. She's a triathlete turned comedian and has quite the story of pushing the boundaries to follow her dreams. With the help of arms to cut through water, legs to run, and muscles to power the seat of her bike, she made a name for herself on the racing course, and now she's taken the mic in her one-woman stand-up comedy show, BCAD, Before Children, After Diapers. Brilliant.
But unlike a plane, in a parent's life, 4 hours can be excruciatingly long. It's almost a lifetime. Because if that email had arrived at 6 p.m. the night before, rather than 10 p.m., my husband and I could have sat across the dinner table, had a civil conversation, organized someone or something called a babysitter, a human being, or a television, and, you know, done something to prolong our marriage, for example, through various lockdowns. Coronavirus has taught me a lot about being a good parent. Just this week, 2 of my children...
Okay. Anu Vaidyanathan. Vaidyanathan?
Yes.
This morning.
I'm glad she's a comedian.
I know. I was just saying, my actual government last name trips up a lot of people too, so that's why I've shortened it. But without further ado, here she is, and she has a little helper for the pronunciation.
Please correctly pronounce your last name.
Why do you not then?
Why do you not then?
Why do you not then?
There you go. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Your story is intriguing, inspiring, entertaining, all at the same time. You grew up in India. You started off your career as an engineer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to us about that, please.
I was a very nerdy and serious child. You couldn't pull me out of physics class with a forklift. I was very, very serious. And I picked engineering because Bangalore, the city where I grew up, was also, sort of awakening to this technology boom, And everybody wanted to sort of ride it. And my parents were the kind of people that said, we'd love you regardless. But, but home science was not for me. So I was like, no, I'm going to stick a fork in a toaster instead and see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
It's just so funny to me because I feel like engineering and comedy are the absolute polar opposite ends of the spectrum. I love it. You've just been there and back.
Yeah, that's right.
In your whole career. And you were the first Asian woman to complete an Ultraman.
Right.
Which, okay, Ultraman Canada, which, but I'll just, sidebar, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. So you did an Ultraman, which
yes.
you're going to explain what that is, and an Iron Man.
Yeah.
What? How? First of all, what is an Ultraman?
An Ultraman is a 3-day stage race. You have a 10-kilometer swim, you bike around 420, but they split it up. And
3 days.
you run 84 kilometers on the last day.
Dios
double marathon.
mío. All right, so after you decided, I'd rather stick a fork in the toaster than be serious about this. How do you make the transition, about engineering, how do you make the transition to triathlons? Because I have done a few.
Yeah.
And I remember I mulled over it for a year before I even got in the pool. What was your story like?
So I was a very chubby kid. I had a sort of this pressure cooker of a college. We had 5 women in a graduating class of 150. So you had to run, otherwise you'd lose your mind. And in running, I figured that you have other parts to your anatomy, like a full rib cage, you have full collarbones, cheekbones,
Right.
So I was very excited to make these discoveries, and I kept going until I, did a few triathlons. And I think it was also my cultivation of a, great love for the outdoors, which in our country is very lopsided, And also women's safety is not really the greatest thing. So I felt that it gave me a way to just be by myself, even if it were at 4 in the morning, or, being in stadiums with no toilets for women. Or whatever the case was. Gosh. Yeah, it was an adventure.
It's a thing.
Yeah, worth pursuing.
What's your favorite event? The running, the biking, or the swimming?
I think running is a poor man's sport, because you don't need access,
Right.
You need shoes.
As long as you have 2 feet, you can do it.
Exactly. You don't even need shoes, actually.
Yeah.
You
I
actually
was going to say, I've seen some people do it without.
So have I. And the swimming, you got to stay alive.
Yeah.
So it turns out you got to know how to swim. You got to know how to swim.
Sure.
Oh, my gosh.
And I know the bike's not cheap because my sister's had many of them in her triathlon experience as well. But now you're a comedian.
Yes.
I think you were always a comedian. It was just, you needed a vessel.
Now you were doing it on the public stage in a bigger form. So how did we get here? How did you decide that this was going to be a career, if you will?
So the first shift was actually writing a book when I got pregnant for the first time, just talking about my life in triathlon. That went to a film market. And I decided I'm not going to let Bollywood tell my story, so I thought, if I can do this better. So I became a filmmaker, but we were shut down, with the 2 years of the pandemic, couldn't get out, couldn't make a film. And I was obsessed with Blake Edwards. He made lots of wonderful movies, including The Pink Panther.
Yeah.
And he cites, Leo McCarey as one of his early mentors. And I was obsessed with Duck Soup, right? And I was investigating the physics of a gag. And I went to clown school, met this old Indian master clown, who... He's a Frenchman, but he's an old Indian master because he broke my back pretty much. He was like, "You're the weakest link, and I'm going to take care of that." So,
wow.
Yeah. But he was a good person. He just made me very acutely aware that sitting with my life was not good enough to tell the stories I wanted to tell, which are out in the world really.
Yeah.
So, I think stand-up was something of a reaction to that realization that, this is not going to cut it. And I was just there to be a better director, but I ended up becoming a stand-up comedian. So that's the transition.
Back this up 1 second. So you're at clown school with the master clown, Indian clowns fella instructor. And he said, what wasn't going to cut it? Just telling your story or turning your story into a film?
So Philippe Collier is a contemporary of Peter Brook, a great stage director. Right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to be there, sort of learn everything by osmosis, right? I thought I'm just going to take notes in the corner, learn how to sort of enable my actors, with the physical comedy bits. But he made me aware that I'm in a room with professional performers. It's not going to cut it to just sit and take notes.
So you needed to actually experience what they were experiencing to understand it, and that is how we get through comedy.
Yes.
And you being on stage.
Yes. He's not a lover of stand-up. He's more into physical clowning. But I felt like that was the real anvil to discovering whether this was something I would ever do, and I did. And it was fun. So yeah.
So what, you had your first...
I can't even believe we're saying
gig,
this, but this is now our second person that we've had sitting on this couch show was at clown school.
That's right. That's right. And one of them is nominated for a Tony now.
Tony Award. Okay, so talk to us about the concept for your show, BCAD.
Which is
Before
brilliant.
Children, After Diapers.
Brilliant.
So, I think a woman goes through a very long tunnel, from before having children to after changing a mountain of diapers, right? And I think I just wanted to speak to that tunnel because if nothing else, it creates a flow path lighting plan, for my kids to follow. Don't do this, do that, don't do that, don't do.
That's right.
So it's also free therapy because as a woman director, you can't be direct. That's your sort of note to self. And comedy is a halfway house to deal with whatever it is I have to deal with when trying to make art in this world, right? Where you're stood in pretty much a pit of people who are very ambitious, who are there for a reason, but it's your sort of job as a self-produced maker to only be a dream catcher, and that can be very, very difficult.
Sure.
And I think comedy gave me that halfway house, but I think it was basically having kids that made me realize that, they're very quick and they don't care about quadratic equations.
They keep you honest.
Totally.
I will tell
fodder
you.
for jokes, I'm sure, too.
Good fodder for jokes, and we love guests on our show who say, there was nothing out, no one was hiring me. There was no one on X, Y, or Z that looked like me, so I decided to do it myself. What was the moment where you realized, I'm the first Indian woman to do this? When was that epiphany for you?
So I think I'm someone who's sort of deaf in both ears to praise or criticism, and I feel that for me, there's no, the choices are you either do it or you don't, right? And I felt that with stand-up, because it made me feel so fulfilled as an artist. Books and films, they take years to find any validation if that's what you're looking for, and everybody is, and so. When I figured that this feedback loop is so quick, obviously I'm a very selfish person, so I said, no, that's it, I'm doing it. And here I am.
And here you are.
Just a fascinating story. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. And BCAD, Before Children, After Diapers, is making its off-Broadway run, June 2nd. Oh, my God. Through the 4th, you can grab your tickets at sohoplayhouse.com.